Param Vijayate Sri Kṛṣṇa Sankirtanam, total world victory of Hare Kṛṣṇa. My name is Sitapati Danna.
My name is Danna Devi.
And this is Bhagavad-gita as it is, 263. Bhagavad-gita, the Song of God, as it is by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Chapter 2, English name, comes from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary. It's
The Song of God?
No. It's the contents.
The content of the Gita.
Summarized.
Summarized. I was going to say that.
Yeah. It's the content of the contents of the Gita summarized.
Yeah.
Traditional name.
Sankhya Yoga.
Sankhya Yoga, yeah. If you're tuning in live or even not live, feel free to tag a friend or 10 and spread the good news of the Bhagavad Gita. Let people know about it. Give us a like, comment, subscribe, thumbs up. Drop your comments in there. Give us some encouragement. Let us know that you are watching where you're watching from. We're going to dive right in. For those of you who are watching this in the archives later. Bhagavad Gita 263. You want to do the Sanskrit today?
Yep, sure.
Go for it.
Krodhāt. Krodhāt. Bhavati. Krodhāt. Bhavati. Sammohaḥ. Sammohāt. smṛti-bhraṁśād.
Achyuta.
What timing? smṛti-bhraṁśād. Bhraṁśād. Buddhi-nāśo. Buddhi-nāśaḥ. praṇaśyati. Yeah.
That's it.
Buddhi.
Okay. Okay. Krodhāt.
From anger.
Bhavati.
Takes place.
Like becomes or is born. Sammohaḥ.
Perfect illusion.
Sammohāt.
From illusion.
Smṛti.
Of memory.
Vibhramaḥ.
Bewilderment.
smṛti-bhraṁśād.
After. Bewilderment. After bewilderment of memory.
Yeah, smrti, to remember. Bhraṁśād, illusion.
Okay.
Yeah, bewilderment. Buddhi-nāśaḥ.
Loss of intelligence.
Buddhi-nāśāt.
And from loss of intelligence.
praṇaśyati.
Falls down.
Translation. From anger, delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool.
Party.
Purport. Go for it.
Oh, can I do just one half?
Yeah.
By development of Kṛṣṇa consciousness, one can know that everything has its use in the service of the Lord. Those who are without knowledge of Kṛṣṇa consciousness artificially try to avoid material objects. And as a result, although they desire liberation from the material bondage, they do not attain to the perfect stage of renunciation. On the other hand, a person in Kṛṣṇa consciousness knows how to use everything in the service of the Lord. Therefore, he does not become a victim of material consciousness. For example, for an impersonalist, the Lord or the Absolute, being impersonal, cannot eat, whereas an impersonal tries to avoid good eatables. A devotee knows that Kṛṣṇa is the supreme enjoyer and that he eats all that is offered to him in devotion.
I got it. So after offering good eatables to the Lord, the devotee takes the remnants called prasādam. Thus, everything becomes spiritualized and there's no danger of a downfall. The devotee takes prasādam in Kṛṣṇa consciousness, whereas the non-devotee rejects it as material. The impersonalist, therefore, cannot enjoy life due to his artificial renunciation. And for this reason, a slight agitation of the mind pulls him down again into the pool of material existence for a pool party.
Yay.
It is said that such a soul, even though rising up to the point of liberation, falls down again due to his not having support in devotional service. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. The text again. From anger, delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. All right, should we have a look at the changes? Okay, so in the revised and enlarged edition, it's gone from, delusion to complete delusion arises.
Complete delusion arises. I don't know what is complete delusion.
Okay, so and then in the purport, well, let's have a look at this change here. So that's not marked in here. Let's have a look at Prabhupada's. Illusion arises. Sammohaḥ, it says here, perfect illusion. Perfect illusion. And here, delusion arises rather than perfect illusion. Complete delusion. Prabhupada's one says perfect illusion. To go closer to Prabhupada, if you were going to change it, the first edition editor changed perfect illusion to delusion.
Delusion.
Yeah.
Illusion to delusion.
Not just illusion to delusion, but perfect illusion has changed in the first edition to delusion. Yeah. And the word for word stays the same. So he's changed this. So Prabhupada's manuscript goes word for word, perfect illusion, translation, perfect illusion. Edition 1 goes translation, perfect illusion, and then, word for word, perfect illusion, translation, delusion. Second edition, word for word, perfect illusion, translation, complete delusion.
Complete illusions, like, wow, I didn't know that illusion can be complete.
Well, I mean, if you were gonna change it, they changed it, but they did not change it to what Prabhupada wrote. They changed it to something else again.
Yeah.
That's a speculation. Why didn't they go from delusion to perfect illusion? Let's have a look here. And from illusion, bewilderment of remembrance is manifested. So they've gone with delusion there and then kept it here from delusion. This change doesn't make sense to me. The first edition editor has gone from perfect illusion to delusion. And the second edition editor, rather than going, you know what, we're going to undo that change and we're going to make it perfect illusion, instead has chosen complete delusion, which is an editorial choice. It's not a closer to Prabhupada. It's a distinct editorial choice is what that is.
Okay.
Okay, next. There's an entire section here that was missing in the first edition by development of Krishna consciousness, but the second edition starts, Srila Rupa Goswami has given us this direction. And this one I know, Vairagyam Falgu Katyate, is said to be false renunciation. Falgu Vairagyam. It must be spoken about. It's in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And this comes from Prabhupada's manuscript. So in this case, the change that's been made here of putting this back in is taking it closer to Prabhupada's manuscript.
Only that. Okay.
Yeah. So their so-called renunciation is called Falgu, or less important. In another place, Prabhupada calls it false renunciation. Their so-called renunciation is called Falgu, or less important. So that's an insertion of a missing section here. There. Yep. So that's good. Then put that piece in there. See those two changes there, additions from the manuscript, I could get on board with that. Thus everything becomes spiritualized, but just not by a person who does the other stuff at the same time. I just can't get on board with that. Yeah.
Start with the ranting.
Huh? Start with the ranting, did you say?
Mm-hmm.
I've got something for a rant. I got something for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a couple of commas, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they got put in.
Yeah.
And therefore, yeah, okay, they didn't really need to be done. Yeah, I don't know, you know, it's kind of like, and I think this is why Srila Prabhupada's like, don't change a comma. Because as soon as they're like, oh, look, we're adding in extra sections that Prabhupada left out, and while we're at it, we're also going to, and Prabhupada's just like, don't change anything. Because he knows that once they start doing that, it's uncontrollable, uncontrolled senses, you know?
If you do it once, you will do it again. Because it's tempting.
Well, if we have a look at the verse under discussion, which is very pertinent, so Dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangat teshu vijayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho vijayate. The previous verse. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. And then today's verse, from this anger comes bewilderment of memory. Complete perfect illusion, sammohaḥ.
Illusion.
Yep. Perfect illusion, or second edition, complete delusion. And from delusion, bewilderment of memory. Smṛti-vibhramaḥ. Vibhrama. Bewilderment. Mistaking. So vibhrama means like mistaking one thing for another, like you think a snake is a rope or a rope is a snake. That's vibhrama. Bewilderment.
Yeah.
And then from there, loss of intelligence and
My hairs. Never mind.
Yeah. So yeah, better to stay that they stayed away from doing that. But okay, so I do have a little rant to do on the book changes.
Okay.
But let's just have a look at this verse here and first before we go to that. So in here, it's explaining that it's the process of positive engagement that is not available to the impersonalist. See, they have to try and restrain their senses from the sense objects, right? As the tortoise draws its senses within. But the problem is that they, you know, eventually they explode and they engage with something.
It's like when you withdraw some food for a long time, the person will be hungry, and then when you allow the person to eat, the person will be like crazy.
They go nuts.
Nuts, yeah.
Yeah. That's why,
Yeah.
okay, well, here's a good contemporary example.
Okay.
Straight to contemporary application, then we'll go to the brand. I've got a little thing to show you, which I think you'll quite enjoy.
Okay.
Here's a contemporary example. Tim Ferriss, he's an author. He's written a book called The 4-Hour Body. And he kind of like, his whole thing is about what's the 4% that gives you 96% of the results. 2% that gives you 98% of the results and things. And so he's talking about two different diets. One's called the ketogenic diet, where you drop your carbohydrate intake down to extremely low and your body switches over into ketosis, right? And then the other diet is the slow carb diet, where you have like, you know, complex carbohydrates and you mix them with like fats so that they digest slowly over time. Keep the glycemic index low, right? So that your system metabolism doesn't shuttle it into triglycerides. It's fats. And he said that, you know, the ketogenic diet is going to give you way more radical and high performance results. Like when I'm competing in bodybuilding competitions, I go into ketosis as part of that. And I do intermittent ketosis and then like full blown ketosis at the end. And that's how you get the radical results. But then also part of that whole thing, it's not crash dieting because it's slow carb dieting leading into that. But his point is this: most people are not going to be able to manifest the discipline necessary to do ketogenic diet. Because you see, in the ketogenic diet, if you blow it, you blow everything because you're relying on the ketosis state, right? The ketogenic state. And if you have, I'm just going to sneak a piece of ice cream or whatever, one scoop, and boom, your body's no longer in ketosis and you get no benefit from the diet. None. Zero.
Oops.
Yeah. Whereas with the slow carb diet, you can blow it one way or another a little bit and it just changes the kind of angle of the gradient. Whereas it's not like a complete state shift from like, from one moment you're in ketosis and then you're not,
Right.
It just changes the gradient a little bit. So his point is for most people, they should do the slow carb diet because they're just not going to have the discipline to pull off ketosis.
Right.
The only way I can do it is like Nirjal or a competition. Those kind of like intense things that supporting kind of things around it.
Right.
And that's the same thing with this idea here, that my turn to sneeze. I'm going to mute it when I do. Because it's very
The
loud.
loudest sneeze ever heard. My ears are screaming in pain. Never mind.
That's the same thing, rather than like being like, oh, I'm going to be celibate and like I spit at the thought of sex life with a woman in the next minute. You're just like, it's all off. Yeah. It's like, get married, regulate it, have sex life for procreation, have children, maintain your children, and then you become purified because, it's all a part of a whole package,
Yeah. Also, it's like, it's awesome to see you have your creative little you that you can raise, have a best friend next to you, see him or her growing with you and be your best mates, best friends with your own child, with your own creation.
Yeah, unless they turn out to be a demon or like, or you're a demon and they turn out to be a devotee, like Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu. He didn't appreciate it. He was like, I didn't appreciate this, taking the side of the enemy.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
as long as you get the astrology right, because that was what went wrong with Hiranyakashipu, you see, because the astrology was wrong. It was the wrong time.
Wrong time or the perfect time?
Yeah. Okay, ready for the rant?
All right.
Okay, here you go. I found this. This is from the ISKCON Communications Journal, 2005.
Ooh.
Right? Editing the Unchangeable Truth, an overview of the editorial history of the books of His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, right? Now, we're going to skip over all this beginning kind of justification thing. I would like to see an apology from Jayadvaita Swami like, hey, I acknowledge that I got it wrong and it's caused a lot of disturbance to devotees.
Yeah.
That would be realistic. But,
probably not in this lifetime.
Well, you never know. On his deathbed, it could be a thing. But
let's keep
this is interesting here, which
when
is
the Yamadutas is disturbed, I'm like,
yeah. This is an interesting table,
okay,
which lists the primary English editors, and so editors mentioned in parentheses did minor work, usually in the form of final checking or polishing or supplying missing material. So that first Bhagavad-gita was Hayagriva and Roy Ram. And Satsvarup and Roy Ram did teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Roy Ram, Hayagriva, Kṛṣṇa consciousness, Nectar of Devotion, Purushottama, Roy Ram, Hayagriva and Jayadvaita were minor editors. Satsvarup and Hayagriva did Kṛṣṇa, chapters 1 through 37. Satsvarup and Jayadvaita did chapters 38 to 90, and Hayagriva was a minor editor. So here is where Jayadvaita steps into a lead role in 71. Bhagavad-gita Unabridged 72. Roy Ram and Hayagriva were the principal editors, and Jayadvaita was a minor editor. Bhagavatam first and second cantos, Hayagriva with Jayadvaita secondary. Yeah. Hayagriva on Perfection of Yoga and Beyond Birth and Death, 2 small books. Now here, the third canto, Satsvarupa and Jayadvaita take over, and Hayagriva's the backup guy. While they're working on that, Hayagriva is editing On the Way to Kṛṣṇa, Rajavidya, the King of Knowledge, and Elevation to Kṛṣṇa Consciousness, the Matchless Gift, some small books. The fourth canto, Satsvarupa and Jayadvaita are the main guys, and Hayagriva is the minor editor. And then the fourth canto, the bulk of it actually, is Hayagriva with Jayadvaita as a minor editor. Chaitanya Charitamrita, kind of switching it up here. So you can see Hayagriva's like 75, he's still editing here. And then Jayadvaita really kind of steps into things here. Dravida comes in on the Antya Leela. Jayadvaita, Bhagavatam, second half of the 5th canto. Nectar of Instruction, Rishikeshananda. Anyway, so here, this is the part that I wanted to focus on. Revisions to BBT books. Starting from the early 1970s, or perhaps even earlier, the BBT has published revised versions of Srila Prabhupada's books. The editorial staff discovered occasional errors in published books and routinely corrected them in later printings. Rarely, Srila Prabhupada himself also pointed out a word or passage he wanted revised. In accordance with standard publishing practice, the BBT published such revisions without giving notice. Well, that's interesting. Also, beginning from the early 1970s, the BBT began publishing Srila Prabhupada's books in versions revised so extensively that they deserve to be called second editions. The first of these were re-edited versions of Easy Journey to Other Planets, 72, and Sri Upanishad, both revised by Hayagriva Das on the grounds that the English editing stood in need of substantial improvement. Okay, so there's a whole section here. Now, here it is here. After Srila Prabhupada passed away, the BBT editorial staff continued to notice and correct editorial discrepancies in Srila Prabhupada's books. Many of these were brought to light by ISKCON devotees, especially those serving as BBT translators. BBT's translated books by Srila Prabhupada into some 85 languages. As during Srila Prabhupada's presence, the BBT continued to correct minor editorial errors routinely without giving notice. But again, as in Srila Prabhupada's time, for some books, more extensive revisions seemed needed. Thus, in 1979, the BBT trustees resolved Harikesh Swami will discuss with Satswarup Goswami and Jayadvaita Swami about the necessary corrections in original manuscripts such as Bhagavad-gita as it is, completed edition, third canto, etc. My review of Bhagavad-gita as it is turned up editorial errors and omissions extensive enough to warrant a second edition. So after extensive consultation with senior ISKCON devotees, the second edition was published in 1983. Okay, so
Yep.
Look at that footnote. Now he's talking about other books here. And then, so no other mention of the Bhagavad-gita. Apart from the books mentioned here as having been revised, all of Srila Prabhupada's books continue to be published only in their original editions with only occasional minor corrections. Okay. Now, the thing is that here it says, and this was done in 2005, it says that there was an 83, but there are changes to the translations that are not, they're not noted in here. It will be interesting to know when those happened, right? Like to get an actual 83 edition to see how that differs, because we know the 92, 96, and 2020 editions differ, but listen to this. Keeping track of BBT editorial history. Because on the title and copyright pages of Srila Prabhupada's books, the BBT staff has often been less than meticulous. What a political way of putting it. They've often been less than meticulous about recording new editions for some books, especially those published and revised during Srila Prabhupada's lifetime. One may have a hard time discerning which edition one is reading. Aware of this, the BBT directors have resolved that future printing should make the publishing history more clear. Additionally, in 2002, this is 20 years ago, 20 years ago, the BBT directors hired a consultant to conceive of a comprehensive system for keeping track of the editorial history of each English BBT title. The systems, the directors said, should enable us to preserve, catalog, and access the various edited and unedited versions, and it should tell us for each version who did what, when, and why, both in summary and ideally at the level of the sentence or the word. And the system should work for other languages as well.
After 20 years.
The consultant has provided specifications for such a system, ambitious in scope, and work is underway at the Bhaktivedanta archives. The envisioned outcome is a searchable hypertext library, perhaps accessible on the internet, that would enable a researcher who selects a particular verse or passage to view the relevant pages of the original and revise manuscripts, any editorial notes, The first and later editions, the Sanskrit or Bengali commentaries Srila Prabhupada consulted, and so on. Also included for each title would be a production history naming the original editors, typesetters, proofreaders, layout people, and other production people, telling where the prepress work was done, giving the size of the first print run, and telling who were the printers and binders for the original edition. By this system, the BBT intends to keep, as far as practicable, an audit trail for scholars, BBT staff, and other interested readers, so that most readers can have the benefit of books carefully edited, yet free from burdensome critical apparatus, while those who wish may avail themselves of a detailed editorial history. In advance of such a history, I hope the present overview will be of some service to seekers of editorial truth. That was over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Nothing's been implemented.
No.
You can see we're doing the work ourselves using various tools and things that have been produced by different devotees. But here's the thing. Such a system already exists. And it's already even in 2002, it existed and it was in widespread use all over the world. Source control systems, the source code. Subversion, they could have used subversion, or they could have used CVS, concurrent versioning system. I don't know who they paid for that thing, but and then they still haven't done it now.
Yeah. So they spend some money to pay this consultant, and the consultant made it clear this is what you need to do, and blah blah blah. They haven't done that, so that is just like, this is just like a teaser, you know. Oh, at least they will know that we were trying, but hey, we didn't manage to finalize it. It's like,
well, this is what someone said. Now let's do a mashup crossover with child abuse. Someone said this about Bhakti-Vidyapurna someone who was working in, it was a female devotee, a lady who went there to Mayapur and did a school for girls over in Vrindavan or somewhere a long time ago. And she said that he instructed her in two things. He said, when the parents are coming and they have some complaint or something, you should immediately go on the attack and have like a series of complaints about the child so that they're on the defensive. Wow. And then the second thing that he said, and she said, and I witnessed him doing both of these things, is his modus operandi. And the other one is what you do is you just agree with all of the criticisms that they bring, and you agree with it and everything. And then you do nothing, and then it will go away.
He's a bloody psychopath.
And that's what this is.
Yeah, exactly.
20 years later, we'll give you the benefit of the doubt at the time, maybe, but it's like George Bush said, you know, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, you can't fool me twice.
Yeah, it's kind of, you can see that psychology there, the tactic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But such a thing exists already. Yeah, the CVS subversion, they could have used that. And then they just haven't done it. And now it's like 20 years later, we're going through trying to figure out what's been done and why. Like, when was this change made from delusion to complete delusion? Who did it? And what's the reasoning behind this? If they're going to change it, why did they not change it to perfect delusion? It's just so irresponsible. Even if Jayadvaita Swami was everything that they say that he is, you know, his supporters, like, he's never been involved in a philosophical deviation. He's whatever, he's qualified to do it. How could he create a system that allows conditioned living entities to modify the books with no transparency of who did it or why it was done?
Exactly. So there is a motive in there. There's an intention in there. That is not positive, obviously.
It's been mixed in with it because, you know, on the one hand, in this one here, you have like some things that are pretty clear, you know, improvements and closer to Prabhupada, like bringing back in this verse from Srila Prabhupada, from Rupa Goswami, in the manuscript. This paragraph here, or sentence, that was missed out. Let me show you in here, because it's easier for you to see it. See this here, this Rupa Goswami, this quotation from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu was omitted from the first edition. And then this line here, their so-called renunciation is called Falgu, or less important. That was also missed out in the first edition. And they were in the manuscript. So bringing them in, thumbs up. Changing this thing from delusion to complete delusion. It's like, why? How do you justify that? What's the editorial philosophy there? Yeah, doesn't match.
Is it like a complete synonym of perfect? And then why put it as a synonym when it can be?
Why not? Yeah, that's
Honestly,
what I'm
just-
saying. It's like,
Just put it as it is.
yeah, like this one is, I have taken something that was in the manuscript and got missed out. That's what that is. These are this is what Srila Prabhupada typed.
Mm-hmm.
This is not what Srila Prabhupada typed.
Right.
So how do you justify that?
Mm.
I've just done something. This is better than Prabhupada. That's what that is.
Okay.
Okay, to the translation. Anything else you want to say? That was my little rant.
I know. All right to rant about something that is important to you. Personal law. What was it about the falgu?
So it's here. They do not attain to the perfect stage of renunciation. It goes in there. So it's not in that edition.
Can you go back to Srila Prabhupada? Because I prefer him.
But can you read it?
The so-called renunciation is called falgu or less important.
Yeah.
Krishna consciousness is the result of that of such persons desiring liberation from material authors to not attain. Is less important. On the other hand, a person in Krishna consciousness knows how to do everything in the service of Krishna. Okay. Now it's just my brain was going a different tangent. But anyways, if we go back to the I think Srila Prabhupada, I'm sorry. The letters. From anger, perfect illusion arises, and from illusion, bewilderment of remembrance is manifested. Yeah, sometimes when you're so angry, you're not thinking properly, right? And then your memory just changes and creates new episodes.
Yeah.
And whatever, makes a new movie to justify or attack someone.
Yeah, it's interesting that Dhira Govinda Prabhu on that point said, devotees should be outraged by this change, speaking of that change in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And like, I have to admit that examining this and what's been done and how it has been done has it has provoked like a rage in me. And then I'm left wondering, because I can see how the devotees for whom like this makes perfect sense, they just be like, why are you so upset about this? You know what I'm saying? Like, but even the fact that there's no acknowledgement that like, you know what, we have made mistakes here. Because even to admit that, for Jayadvaita Swami to admit we made mistakes here and devotees are justifiably angry about that, would be to acknowledge that they don't have the qualification to do what they've done. And they can't do that. So they've got to double down on it.
Yeah.
And that's why they should never have done it. Because this was inevitable, and the fact that they couldn't see that is a disqualification. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing of anger, the emotion, using anger is okay. I mean, feeling angry is okay, but how you use anger, you have to be careful with that. Yeah, very, very careful. Although when you're angry, you just want to be angry.
Oh yeah, I like being angry. It's good. That's where I get all my energy from. Anger, hatred, the dark side of the force. Let the hate flow through you.
Okay.
Sorry. Good.
And we can see that some people are, if they are. So what happened these days is like people try to suppress anger.
You got to channel it.
Exactly. Let me get there.
Yeah.
So, for example, when a child is feeling like overwhelmed with anger and frustrated and screaming and blah blah blah, There's a sense of parents like,
This is wrong.
it's wrong. It's not okay to feel angry and, express in this way and that way.
Oh man.
And instead of like, okay, you're angry, I can see you're very angry. And it's okay to be angry.
There was a little girl in the warehouse the other day when we were there, and she was like yelling and crying.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was riding around on some little tricycle thing from there. And then her mother was just kind of ignoring her and like walked off. I was like, I'm not dealing with this, And the kids there yelling. And I just remember that. Kṛṣṇa never really did that. You know how children, they scream to try and get something that they want in the shop? Because I don't know whether they psychically know this or what, or if it's just a thing. But, the parents will give it to them to shut them up because it's so embarrassing for them in the shop. Anyway, something to look forward to.
Well,
Was Isabella like that? Did she do that?
no.
That's funny.
She tried to copy that from the childcare center when we put her in the childcare center. She tried, but she learned a lesson because I was quite attentive to her feelings. I see what she's needing and, lots of love and care and all of that. So she was quite well looked after, nurtured.
Yeah, not really.
And then when she started picking up that one, I'm just like, no. Like, it's okay for you to feel angry, but doesn't mean you have to copy what all your friends are doing. Not okay. Yeah. You can talk to me what you need, and I'm quite happy to give it to you. And then she learned that. She learned she got a cold shower because, they go into these like horrible tantrums, like, it's not okay. We can talk about this. Tell me what you need, and I'm going to give it to you. So she understood, and later on she understood, okay, you have love, you nurture. I can do all of this with you. But trying to manipulate me with the crying and tantrum, no. No. So it was a big no. Doesn't work for me. So I explained to her, it's, you cannot pick this one as a weapon and use it against me. Because perhaps those children are trying to take the attention of their parents and the parents are not giving. So the only thing they can do is this, like, I want attention, I want your love and I want this and I don't get it. So like, wow. And the parents just like, whatever. You know what I mean? But for me, it's like, I know you're angry. I know you're crying, but tell me why you're crying, Oh, this happened. Like, I attended to that.
You can see it in, without mentioning any names, in adulthood when I don't know whether this is how it happens, but like adults who actually act that way. It's kind of like, and then if I look at myself, I'm like, I do see how I produce results in the world in that way.
Yeah. I can say that too. Like, something bothers me. I don't want to be in this. I'm going to get something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'll actually take action on it. But then I see other people who they kind of like get like angry and then like throw a tantrum. And then they do that over and over again. And that's just kind of their way of interacting with people and getting things done. Like it's kind of like that. There's a range of different ways and different, it's like Paul Songhurst, the self-expression and leadership program leader, he used to say that self-expression, and this is probably from the curriculum, is any spontaneous and natural way of being that's effective in dealing with the circumstances that are in front of you. So self-expression is any natural and spontaneous way of being that's effective in the face of the circumstances that are in front of you. But sometimes, like being angry or throwing a tantrum or something is natural and spontaneous, but it's not effective. Like it works when it works. Like I do enjoy those situations where I can channel my rage into it, like winning a bodybuilding competition, There's an incredible amount of discipline and like austerity involved in that. A lot of pain you have to go through. You have to get up early in the morning and go and train, and you're meditating on like crushing your enemies and drinking from their skulls, and that's how you go through that whole thing. Or even like the parliament occupation, like outrage at the injustice and like, I will, We're gonna bring down Babylon, you know, having that kind of like thing there. And Prabhupada talks about it as like Hanuman's anger and how he burned down Lanka. You know, when
Unintentional.
Yeah, it was unintentionally, but it was. Yeah, yeah,
Flick the tail. Oh no.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So anger has its place in the range, but when that's your only go-to game, and I see devotees on Facebook, you know, like we have Garuda Prabhu coming on the Vaishnava Voices podcast this weekend.
Oh my. Yeah.
And there are devotees out there who want to crucify him, you know? And it's like, yeah, I don't know. Garuda Prabhu said to me, like, you know, a farmer once said you can catch more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. You know, sometimes it's appropriate to be angry, but if you're just that all the time, all you end up with is like no reproachment, no engagement. And then just to wrap it all the way back around to the book changes, you know, people are like, oh, have you written to Jayadvaita Swami to ask him about that? But I'm like, dude, people have been doing the engagement strategy for a long time. Like Dera Govinda Prabhu is like, I wrote about this in like, I don't know what it was, 1999 or whatever. It's 20 years later. There's no system for examining anything. There's no transparency now. I'm not wasting my time in that. Yeah, yeah, we're beyond that.
Yeah. So the only thing to do with this would be like to go back to the first edition.
Yeah.
And then diminish the amount of the second edition to be.
Yeah, crush the second edition in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Get everyone on the first edition. And then get up and underneath this 50th anniversary Macmillan edition that Garuda Prabhu has. Maybe we could talk about two things on the podcast: the 50th anniversary Mac and his heretical paper, When the Master Speaks, containing his deviant vada of careless vairagya, it's called. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd go with the 50th edition Mac.
Kind of intellectually teasing, isn't it?
What's that?
The way he's doing that. I want to hear how and why.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just to get in his world.
Yeah.
And understand.
I mean, I have several objections to it that I'd like to explore with him. And he's happy to do that because I didn't come at him like, you're wrong and this and that. I'm like, no, I think I see what you're doing here and why you're doing it. It's nothing worse than people who like refute me and argue against me on the internet and they're not even arguing against me. It's not even anything that I said. You know, they don't even understand me. I don't mind if people disagree with me as long as they understand me. And then in the realm of books, we got this book today. It's arrived. It's Govinda Dasi's book, A Place of Sandalwood and Roses. Do you want to open it up?
Sure. Okay. He's ready with the knife.
Yeah.
I mean, not even a nail, long nail. There you go. From there we go.
It's the unboxing, the unveiling. What do you think of having the microphone like that there in the picture?
Okay.
Can't wait till this new green screen arrives so we can have like our picture fully expanded throughout the new cameras and stuff. We're going to be upgrading since streaming seems to be a thing that we do. You want to hold it up for the camera now?
Yeah.
Now that it's open, it's not reflecting all over the
Yeah.
place. A Place of Sandalwood and Roses.
Oh. There we go.
Epic. By Govinda Dasi.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to read.
Yeah, this was
her
sent to us by
pastimes.
Patita Pavana Prabhu and Abhaya Mudra's disciples in Wellington.
Oh.
Yeah. Epic, eh?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to read through that. We've got some more bedtime reading. Yet another book.
Look at that.
Is that Govinda Dasi?
Govinda Dasi, Once Upon a Time. Gorgeous.
Yeah, amazing.
Super gorgeous. Anyway,
Okay, should we wrap it up?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's go back to the verse. krodhād bhavati sammohaḥ, sammohat smṛti-vibhramaḥ, smṛti-bhraṁśād buddhi-nāśo, buddhi-nāśāt praṇaśyati.
From anger, delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool.
Joy.
Party time.
Pool party time. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to drop us a comment, what you enjoyed about it, if you did enjoy anything, what you'd like to see more of. Tag a friend or 10 to let them know about it. And above all else, Param Vijayate Sri Kṛṣṇa Sankirtanam. Total world victory of Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.